How I overcame obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, PTSD, trauma, fears, and worry. How I overcame obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, PTSD, trauma, fears, and worry. Hello, y'all. I'm Dianna, Brianne. I don't give advice, suggestions, information, recommendations. I do share with you my perspective on different topics, as is with this one. I hope you like, share, subscribe. All 5 channel links are pinned to the top of the comments section or description box below. You know, this is more of a very personal video, and I wanted to share this because my channel is all about inspiration, motivation, and living your best life. And so I often share my experiences, not to give advice, yet to let people know that I too have gone through my own things in life, because a lot of people are going through a lot of different kinds of things, and sometimes they feel alone. And so often I will, or sometimes I should say, I will share bits and pieces from my life. And this is something called OCD, Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. For those that don't know what it is, it varies from person to person what it is, and it's not an obsession like we think of people being obsessed with someone or something. It's not that type of thing. And it's not necessarily something that's really negative or anything. It just, it varies. For some people, it can be that they are so perfectionistic that it almost at times can feel like they're immobilized with perfectionism, or they have to go back and check things over and over and over. Or, you know, it's just some kind of ritualistic behavior. Some people have to check light switches. Some people have to wash their hands over and over. Some people, nothing can be out of place. There's so many variations to OCD. And I'm not an expert at OCD at all. I'm just giving you my personal journey. And in addition, I've dealt with PTSD type of things where I've been traumatized over something, and I talked about that in my early 20s. I got attacked down an alley as I was parking my car coming home from work. And I was very, very traumatized and had a lot of difficulty sleeping. You know, if anyone came near me too quickly, I would jump back. And this went on for about 2 years. So I sort of had PTSD, you know, for about a couple years. And that was related to trauma. And I've had other traumas in my life early on. And when you're a child, you're more moldable and you're more fragile, and you're in the developmental stage. And I think that's where my obsessive compulsive disorder originated, was at about age 6, somewhere give or take around age 6. And my fears and worries kind of came along with that, because I grew up in an environment where my mother had grown up, well, she'd grown up in the Great Depression. My grandmother was a young woman in the Great Depression, raising 3 babies by herself. And so there was a lot of fear and worry that had been instilled in them, and that was easily carried over into, you know, those around them, because people where I grew up had, you know, gone through a lot of things. And so a lot of people had what I call unhealthy fears and worries. Now, healthy fears and worries are not worries, but healthy fears are more things where a bear is running towards you through the woods, and you get out of its way. That's used for a healthy purpose. So fear can be a good thing if it's meant to protect us. But where fear becomes unhealthy is where it's not there to protect us anymore, and it's there to hold us back. And that's kind of where my obsessive compulsive disorder came in at around age 6, when my parents had divorced. That was very traumatic for me. Things were kind of very shaky financially. You know, we were going through a very difficult time. there was a lot going on there. And then my mother remarried very briefly. And so I began to want to control things. I began, I was very religious as a young child, and I would pray all the time. I felt like if I could pray all the time, that would protect me and protect my mother. I was always afraid of losing my mother. And because I felt like she was all I had, even though I had my grandmother and we had a lot of relatives, I felt, my mother was my stability. And so I developed all these little patterns so that I could control things around me. So that even though it was imaginary and not based in reality, I felt like if I was very perfectionistic and I lined everything up just a certain way, and it couldn't be out of place, that would protect me. And so that began to develop, and it kind of changed into different things. And the fears and worries kind of came into play with all that. And I remember one time I, was so fearful to go on a job interview. I was just terrified. It was just something. And that was when I kind of taught myself how to overcome this. Now, I'm not saying this works for anyone else. This is just what worked for me. So I imagined myself as this person that I knew. I had worked with somebody who was just outrageous. They weren't afraid of anybody or anything or any situation. And as grandma would say, they kind of had a screw loose in a good way. And so I pretended I was this person. It was actually a guy. And I pretended I was this person, and I put on a polka dotted dress, a big bright polka dotted dress. Well, it was black with white polka dots, but it was very loud, very bright. I teased my hair up, and I pretended I was him going out in an interview because he was fearless. And I went out in that interview, and out of 37 or 38 applicants, I got the job. And I was probably the least qualified for it, but I got the job. I went in there relaxed and confident and cheerful. And so I began to realize that, I could overcome this thing by just kind of, for me, tricking my mind in a way. And so now, today at almost 65, I'm in great shape. Periodically, the OCD or the fears or worries or, even PTSD will occasionally rear its ugly head, but I address it immediately. For example, I'll give you a current example. When I'm out in the running trail, we have these beautiful trees, and often there'll be one right in the center of the running trail. And so you have to go left or right. And so if OCD is acting up, I have to say, okay, I got to go right. I must go right. I can't go left. And then I say, nope, I'm going to go left. And I go left. So it can come back. It can come back at any point in time. But when I recognize it, I immediately address it. Not so long ago, we were setting up a new computer for me. And I just got like, I don't want to do it. Let's postpone it. Let's not do it. Let's not do it. Now, that came from what would happen if something went wrong? What happens if it doesn't work out? What happens if the computer doesn't work? I was always in the what if mode, and so often as a child I would avoid situations that had the what if, so that I could protect myself from anything out of my control. So I tried to keep everything within control, within limits, so that nothing would get out of control, because my early childhood was so out of control. And so I wanted to keep everything tightly fitted, tightly together and everything. So now I don't do that. So when I noticed that, I said, let's go for it. Let's set that computer up. And actually, I got another computer and I set it all up by myself. And I was fearful, but I set it up. I did it. So for me, I face my unhealthy fears. And I'm a fear chaser, as I call them. I go after it. If I think that they're an unhealthy fear and there's a purpose, a blessing behind that for me to face it, I go and face it. I don't face unnecessary fears. I face ones that are holding me back from something good. And so, yes, I dealt with OCD early on. I overcame my OCD by being alert to it, being aware to it, recognizing it, and then implementing my own way and my own strategy. For everyone, it's different. And the cause of OCD or trauma or PTSD or fears and worry can be different for everyone. My mother, because she grew up in the Great Depression, and a lot of people around her worried about everything. They especially worried about money. My mother would have to triple check her checkbook to make sure it was exactly right. She would pay her bills way before it was ever time, and she would watch for the mailman to come to pick up the letter to make sure he took it. And, you know, I had some of that, and even today I still have some of that, so I have to constantly be on alert for that and work with that so that I don't let myself be pulled into it. So for me, I'm not going to say that it doesn't rear its ugly head, fears, worry, OCD, or even, a traumatic experience can resurface its memory sometimes and want to hold me back, a PTSD type thing. But, everything, the PTSD part, especially in my early 20s when that incident happened, it just took time. It took time for me to heal and being alert to it and being aware to it. Some people get professional help, which can be a very good thing with the right professionals. Other people like me, we didn't have that back then. There wasn't even a term for much of, I don't think there was an OCD term back then, in the 60s and 70s. At least I don't remember one. And there was no PTSD terms that I remember. A lot of these terms came later, and a lot of the availability to help people came later. I just did it all myself. And so, the reasons for having any of these can vary, and the solutions can vary. And so I'm just talking about what worked for me. I always make sure, because I love to do, I talked about good crazy. I love to clean. I love to do this. I love to paint. I'm all over the place doing, things. And I use some of that energy that was in a more negative way with OCD or perfectionism or whatever. I use it in a very positive way now. And so, sometimes I'll stay up late at night and clean. And I call it my good craziness, but I make sure that it doesn't cross the line into OCD at all. I make sure that it's a healthy benefit of having had OCD, that I like things neat and orderly and clean. And then I say, okay, this is good enough, And same way with my exercise. I make sure that it's just right within balance. And now I'm a very, very balanced person, and I keep my eye on balance, probably more so than most people who have never experienced any form of OCD, trauma, worry, fears. For me, I keep my eye on that balance. That's one thing I do, make sure that I stay very, very balanced. So the reason I shared this subject with y'all is because I think a lot of people go through some of the things that I've gone through, maybe for different reasons, and they have different solutions. But I just want people to know that they're not alone if they're going through some kind of struggle. And, it's a lot of people do. And, people look at me sometimes as a role model, as a mentor. They think I have this perfect life. I've never been through anything. And oh my goodness, I've been through a lot of things in my life. That's how come I can talk about so many things. Like I said, I don't give advice, suggestions, information, recommendations. I just share with you my perspective and how I live my life, or how I have lived my life, and some of the things I've been through. And so I don't think we have to share everything on social media or with people in general. I think it's up to us. And so I'm very selective about what I share. And I thought that this topic was something I wanted to share, and perhaps I can help, not help or give advice, but just help people in the sense of letting them know that they're not alone, and that they have to find what's right for them, and that it's not such an unusual thing, and that a lot of people who are very, very successful people have had some of these OCD and fears and worries and PTSD and things like that. Okay, so I do hope you like, share, subscribe. Channel names are pinned to the top of the comment section or description box below. And I hope to talk to you soon again. Bye-bye.